Well, hi, welcome to the Emlen Physick Estate. My name's John. Come on in, I want to show you around. This is the beautiful Emlen Physick Estate house, built in 1879. Has 18 rooms, 8 fireplaces, and 6,100 square feet. Just an amazing place, designed by the architect Frank Furness. Right now we're in the entrance hall, a pretty important social part of the house back in the day. And as we wander in, we see some of the interesting items, and there are plenty in this house. One we always like to show off is the lighting. Looks a little bit unusual. Most people look at this and say, what the heck was going on here? Well, let me take you back a little bit and tell you that the house did not have electricity until at least the turn of the century. So light was provided by gas light. And this was not known as a chandelier. This was called a gasolier. And then when you throw into the mix that our Dr. Physick was a little on the frugal side, he would not commit more than one burner to a new type of lighting. So what we have here really is kind of like a progression in lighting technology. Let me take you over here into the formal parlor. And back when the family lived here, this room was rarely used. If they had a big party, a formal dinner, they would bring guests in here prior to going over into the dining room. And there's lots of neat things in here from the period. I love to look at the windows. These are called pocket windows. They're really cool. You raise them up, they lock into the second floor wall, and that allows you to walk right out of the parlor and onto the porch. And then over in the corner, we have a rather special item known as a Mistletoe Bowl. That was a housewarming gift to the family, so that dates from 1879, and that came from Bailey, Banks and Biddle in Philadelphia. Let's take you over to the music room. Let's take a look around over here. Of course, back in the Victorian times, they didn't have TVs, didn't have stereos, didn't have computers, so oftentimes they provided their own entertainment. No different in this household. They had a baby grand that they kept in the formal parlor. This piano, kind of neat. This is an 1868 piano forte, and it was donated to the museum. And it came with the original bill of sale. Back then, they paid $475 to buy this piano, and they got $75 back because they paid cash up front. $475 back in those days, well, that was enough to purchase a summer cottage here in Cape May. Lots to like about the Victorians, but one thing that I always find fascinating is they had this wonderful way of combining function and aesthetics. We see it in a couple ways in this room. If you look up here at the wall, you see what's called a picture rail. So back then, you didn't have to go knocking holes in the wall to move a picture. You could just slide it on the rail. And then we have another item up above the gasolier. Up on the ceiling, you see what's known as a medallion. Just beautiful, but again, also very functional. These gasoliers did not use the natural gas that we use today. They used what was known as a coal gas. So when you lit off the burners, they gave off a fair amount of soot. The medallion captured that soot. That made the servants around here pretty happy because they didn't have to clean off the entire ceiling. They just had to clean off the medallion. So let me take you over here. I'm going to make one quick stop. I got to show you this one part. At holidays, we decorate this place and it's just beautiful. And the tradition is that we hang a mistletoe ball right here. That was truly the one Victorian tradition that carried on, the mistletoe. Well, every year we get lots and lots of grade school kids in here, especially at the holiday times, and they understand that mistletoe tradition. You can't get a third grader within 10 yards of the mistletoe ball. So come on over here, let me show you where the family would hang out. I'm going to take you into the informal parlor. We call it the sitting room. So come on in. Yeah, this is where the family would hang out. And Victorians were known to be great collectors. Dr. Physick's mother, Mrs. Ralston, no different. She collected ladies' fans. And the people back then also liked to collect little photographs, which were known as scraps. And they would sit around and they would organize their scraps into scrapbooks. You take a look at the sofa. This is an original fabric. But what's cool about it is this was actually a sofa bed. They'd pull out the wooden part and this would flatten out, kind of like a futon. And one of my favorite things to do is to show folks the family. I have some photos I want to share with you. Up on the wall here, you see the three folks that lived here. On the bottom, that's Aunt Emily, a fun-loving type. And the guy in the middle, of course, that's our Dr. Physick, taken to the age of 55. There are only 7 years difference between the doctor and his aunt. And of course, keeping an eye on both of them, Dr. Physick's mother, Mrs. Ralston there, up on top. Now, when you come to Cape May, there's an awful lot to do. There's beaches, there's Victorian architecture, but we must be the most haunted town in America. And when you come to our house tour, you can take a ghost tour at night. We have a medium that will actually take you on your tour. And chances are he'll probably tell you that he senses the presence of Aunt Emily and one of the family dogs. Now, I've never experienced any of these spirits, but doggone, I've had a number of people tell me on my tours they feel like they have a dog nipping at their ankle. That's rather strange. So we're talking about scary things. Let's talk about something really scary. Let's go talk about formal dining. Come on in the dining room. Now, I was only half kidding when I was talking about being scared with formal dining, because I can tell you, if I were invited to a formal dinner back in the Victorian times, I'd have been scared to death. And it had to do with what you had to know. That book of etiquette, which was quite voluminous, started with your time of arrival. You showed up 15 minutes early, that was unacceptable. You showed up 15 minutes late, that was unpardonable. More than likely, you were not going to be invited back. And those Victorians, they changed things up with the serving of the formal meal. Prior to the Victorian time, food would come out to the table. You would have a knife, a fork, a spoon, a glass, and there'd be servants kind of hanging around you, cleaning these items off. And the Victorians changed all that. With them, the food came out to the table, and that created a lot of space on the table, so they'd have large centerpieces. And then along came the advent of electroplating and affordable silverware. So no longer did you have a fork. You may have had an oyster fork and a chipped beef fork, and my personal favorite, the ice cream fork. A 12-person service required 1,900 pieces of silver with a list of serving spoons about as long as my arm. And the meal itself, especially at holiday time, could extend to 12 courses. First course, typically oysters. That kind of fits down here at the shore. The last course, my personal favorite dessert, the big favorite back then, was ice cream. And the meal itself could take a few hours, and when they were done, the ladies, well, they headed over to the formal parlor for some polite conversation. The guys, the night was still young, they were heading upstairs to the billiard room, where they'd have some cigars and cognac. Also a lot of fun. Now, I want to take you in here into little Butlers Pantry. I want to show you something really special. So come on in here. Dr. Physick has a lot of famous people in his background. Maybe this one isn't quite as famous, but he did something pretty important. His name was Philip Singh. He was from Philadelphia. He was a silversmith. And he crafted this silver creamer here back in the 1760s. That's pretty neat. Passed down through the generations. But you know what's even neater is Philip Singh had a pretty good friend in Philadelphia. A guy maybe you've heard of. A guy by the name of Ben Franklin. I have the feeling that old Ben coerced Philip Singh into crafting a rather special item. He crafted the inkstand that was used in the signing of the Declaration. All right, we're going to head to the back kitchen. I don't know about you, I'm hungry, so follow me. Maybe we can find something good to eat. As you come back in here, you have to remember that this was probably the busiest part of the house. And the busiest person was the cook. Her name was Alice Johnson. And she'd get here early in the morning, and she'd leave late. Sometimes she didn't even leave at all. There's actually a cook's bedroom upstairs where she could stay over. Early in the morning, she'd fire up this cast iron stove, which was connected to a hot water heater. Yeah, hard to believe, hot and cold running water to 2 bathrooms upstairs. And then down the way, just like at home, right? There's the washing machine. Guaranteed not an original, because the family did not do their wash in-house. They sent it out. It's like a cottage industry. Every 2 weeks it went out, and the cost to get their wash done was $2.50. And you could buy one of these beautiful Sears and Roebuck babies anywhere between $2 and $5. I always like to show this one other item in our case over here. It's a pretty simple rolling pin. It's made of glass and it is hollow. But those Victorians, they were so ingenious. They would fill it with cold water or ice so that when they rolled out the dough did not stick to the pin. So now we got the dough rolled out. We come on over here and we grab this item. Looks kind of like a Rolodex. This was known as a quick bun cutter. And they would run this over the dough and then they would run it sideways and it would cut out the buns. And pardon me for putting it this way, they would then pop their buns in the oven. So let's take you over and see where the servants were hanging out. So come on up here. We'll take you into the servants' hall. And the family had 7, 8 servants. These folks lived in the area and they walked to work. They'd get here early, get into their attire for the day. And in this room, this is where they would eat their meals. In fact, they could warm their food up on this little stove. It was called a bucket a day stove because it used a bucket of coal a day. And while the servants were here, they could be paged. That ought to excite our Downton Abbey fans. Yeah, the way it worked, there were paging points throughout the house. Somebody would hit a button and the bell would ring and the coil would vibrate and then the servant would respond. And we really don't know where all the paging points were. With one exception, we know that there was one beneath the dining room table under the foot of Mrs. Ralston, so she could get somebody out there pretty quick as need be. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. You got just a real quick tour, a taste of the Emlen Physick Estate. And when all this craziness ends and this coronavirus is out of here, come visit us. But for now, stay safe, enjoy. Bye-bye.